Now, the suffering of Daniel Ricciardo continued in Suzuka, and to make things worse for the 9-time race winner, his teammate managed to score points on his home turf, making even a stronger case as to whether or not Ricciardo should be replaced or not. But after the last statements coming from the Racing Bulls, as well as Red Bull's high-profile members, it does look like they're not very keen on keeping Ricciardo at bay for a longer period of time. And with this in mind, is there another huge shake-up in the drivers' market rising up on the horizon of F1? Daniel Ricciardo's weekend lasted a couple of corners, where he failed to see Alex Albon at his right mirror, resulting in a crash that saw both of the drivers end their race prematurely. The start itself was not satisfactory given the fact that Albon started in the 14th position and found himself fighting with Ricciardo, who started 11th, right behind his teammate Tsunoda. Be that as it may, the Aussie continued the pointless campaign in 2024 and further deepened the talks about his potential replacement, which were initially flamed by rumours regarding Marco giving Ricciardo an ultimatum of 2 races before he gets replaced, only for them to be shut down by the veteran Austrian very quickly. However, Marco did raise the question of whether or not Ricciardo deserves the seat in the Racing Bulls, especially now that Tsunoda is performing the wheels out of that car and is single-handedly keeping them at P6 in the Constructors' Championship, with Haas being 3 points behind at P7. Regardless, Haas obviously has 2 drivers who have scored points in this season and are always hanging around the places that bring scrap points to the drivers, unlike Ricciardo, who not only fails to match the race pace of his teammate, but is also being fairly outqualified by the Japanese teammate, 4-0 in favour of Tsunoda. But according to Ricciardo, this scenario could have been avoided if the starting stint was on the soft tyre and he would have managed to get a better start from the top of the key. Elaborating on this matter to a further extent, Ricciardo said, "We definitely got gobbled up on that medium. That was weird because the cars in front of us looked like they got off the line well. It just looks like Yuki and I didn't have the grip that we anticipated. As soon as we launched, I could see Bottas and Hülkenberg just split us and go around. And then into turn 1, I was in the middle with Yuki and an Alpine, and into turn 2, I thought, alright, let's just settle. And as soon as I got on the throttle, I was still struggling, so then I think Stroll was on the outside, so I was trying to hold him off, and then I guess, as I started to come back for turn 3, Albon was there, I didn't see him." But given the pace of Tsunoda, one couldn't help but wonder whether or not there would be any chance for Ricciardo to fight for points, because his starting position was quite well at P11, and even with the lost places, the tyre degradation and the multiple pit stops could have played a massive role in where Ricciardo would have ended. All of that is in the past now, and what matters the most is that Tsunoda has 7 points in the Drivers' Championship and is scoring points, whereas Ricciardo is struggling to even finish the races in the first place. And all of that is putting more pressure on the never-ending question as to whether or not he's past his prime and whether or not he should be leaving the seat to Liam Lawson. To add fuel to the fire, Horner opened up about a potential replacement for Perez, one that's very unlikely to happen given how consistent the Mexican driver is right now, but even if it does, the 50-year-old Brit said that the team would likely look for an outside hire, as their inside drivers don't seem to be performing up to the desired level, which is a direct blow to Ricciardo's hopes and motivations to continue racing in Formula 1. Another very pivotal factor that we must be adding in this story is the qualifying deficit of Ricciardo to Tsunoda, which is very similar to what De Vries managed to put in compared to the Japanese driver. Obviously, Ricciardo being just half a tenth behind Tsunoda in Suzuka helped his case a lot, but in the first 3 races, it was Tsunoda who reached Q3 in Jeddah, Australia and Suzuka, and finished P11 on Saturday's qualifying session in Bahrain. According to Marco, this is one of the strengths that the Japanese driver is able to present to the grid. But when it comes to pure race pace, the team needs to improve a lot, and as of now, they can only rely on Tsunoda for the long-term point scorer for the team, if nothing drastically changes with Ricciardo and his race pace. One very important factor that the entire F1 world knows about Ricciardo and his relationship with the Racing Bulls is his commercial value, something that even the team commented about. Ricciardo's experience and leadership are also very important factors that are keeping him at bay, but being in the sport for so long and having a charismatic smile while also winning 9 races in your career and driving for one of the best teams at that time does come with its own perks. And Ricciardo's perk is that he has a high commercial value for the newly rebranded expanded team. The financial impact that he has on the team is quite positive, which might be one of the reasons why the Racing Bulls will have to think twice before they get rid of him. And when talking about this matter, the team's CEO, Peter Bayer, admitted that a huge part of their new partner, Visa Cash App, is mostly because of the fact that Ricciardo is present in the team. But commercial values can only take you so far, and if you do not start to bring results in the team, then the question of whether or not you should be replaced will start to rise and put even more pressure on your shoulders, especially given the environment in which Ricciardo is located. The Racing Bulls, as well as Red Bull, are two of the most toxic environments that you could find yourself in if you are an underperforming driver, and the situation that brought Ricciardo back to the grid after a 10-race break in 2023, replacing Nick de Vries, could very well happen to him if things do not improve in the foreseeable future, with Liam Lawson lurking in the shadows and openly admitting that he would be doing a much better job than the Aussie in that seat right now. When talking about the latest incident in Suzuka and whether or not that has an influence on his career in Formula 1, Ricciardo was confident that nothing much has changed and the racing incident won't be viewed as a turning point in the relationship between him and the team. It's frustrating to not finish a race in which you could have scored points, and I think also on Saturday I was obviously frustrated not to make it by a half a tenth into Q3. However, there were some positives. There were some things that we felt like we could have probably shown today. The lap 1 incidents are the worst because they're always those questions of, oh, what could have been? Maybe we could have done this. I think today is a singular moment. I don't look at today and think, oh man, this year, like when it rains, it pours or whatever. I feel it was just one of those things. We know that there are 24 races. It's probably likely that I'm involved in another lap 1 incident. It's probably in that. So these things kind of happen. But if you were to ask Helmut Marko, his view would be vastly different on this entire situation. The Austrian has already raised questions when it comes to the form of the Aussie, saying that there's always something wrong with it, and him being outperformed by Tsunoda is not something that goes well in the Aussie's favour. On top of that, we must remind you that Ricciardo was the one who said that the chassis of the car was not fitted to his style. And while the CEO of the team, Peter Bayer, went on to say that they don't think a new chassis would improve the performance of the Honey Badger, they proceeded to bring it nevertheless, only for him to crash the car in the first couple of corners in Suzuka. Therefore, the question of durability will also be present throughout the season, because it's races like this that matter the most for the lower midfield teams like the Racing Bulls, and potentially Haas, who are looking to improve steadily throughout the course of the 2024 year. We must also not exclude Alpine, who do plan to score points with the second half season upgrades, and all of a sudden, if Tsunoda is the only viable option they have for scoring points, the Racing Bulls could find themselves in a battle for P8, one that they could effectively lose and be far away from reaching their pre-season goal of fighting for podiums and in the top midfield along with the Aston Martins. So, with all this in mind, do you think that Ricciardo has what it takes to keep his seat in F1? And more importantly, do you think that he deserves such a luxury being provided from the Faenza-based squad now that they have Liam Lawson to look out for? Let us know in the comments down below.